Formula One is an ever-expanding sport, but up until now the circus hasn't experienced as much popularity. While the current team owners would love to keep the current format of 10 teams fighting for prestige, that would be practically impossible, and at this point they might not even be the ones to be asked whether the sport will see an 11th team being added from 2025 onwards. Apart from Andretti, who is the obvious leader in the race, a dark horse from the Gulf has emerged as a potential team that could be introduced sooner rather than later with 2 drivers. Various sources have affirmed that the FIA expected a huge interest for new entrants, as 3 to potentially 4 teams have applied under the expressions of interest process. Although the Concord Agreement, the covenant that outlines the commercial obligations of F1 commercial right holder Liberty Media and the teams collectively, is currently responsible for 10 teams that are racing in Formula One, the official document says that up to 12 teams can race on the grid. This has happened in the past, and the 10-team grid, one that has been standing as it is from 2016 onwards, with the addition of Haas as the last team in the sport, and the fact that the Article 8.6 of F1's sporting regulation states that no more than 26 cars will be admitted to the championship, with 2 being entered by each competitor, is definitely pointing towards a future expansion. Is this the right move for the sport? And if it is, who is the dark horse that can take the throne from Andretti? Liberty Media has done a great job of promoting the sport, and the show Drive to Survive, which is a documentary that goes over the entire caravan and the personal lives of the drivers, has done its part as well. Now the sport is enjoying booming popularity in the USA, and that's one of the reasons why Andretti's entrance to the sport is more or less a guarantee at this point, with him announcing some strategic partnerships with American brands such as Cadillac from GM. If you have a huge amount of fans from the States that have started to like the sport all of a sudden, then it will be inevitable for the sport to add an all-American team, one that would likely hire American drivers and would represent the American hopes, unlike Haas. That's why Andretti entering the sport is not to be questioned at this point, at least from our side, as teams and companies like Pantera and Hi-Tech, ones that have also been related to signing the 12th late spot of the grid, are playing a hot and cold game with their chances of participating in the most elitist show in the world. But things have got interesting right now, and Andretti has gained serious competition from a rival that they didn't even know existed up until a couple of days ago. A Swiss-based project originally revealed by the renowned medium Racing News 365, one that was very little known and was headed up by Craig Pollock, who founded British American Racing, has become a serious contender to enter the 11th or 12th spot on the grid. Pollock is by no means a stranger to the F1 world, and even though his mouth hasn't given up too much information regarding the state of his company entering the sport, there is some information that is tying him very close to it and to his potential tries of being part of a nitpicked company. Pollock founded British American Racing by acquiring Tyrrell with a pile of tobacco, and has converted the traditional British team into Bar, which then morphed into the current Mercedes F1 operation. The address and the buildings are the same, merely updated 20 years after the merge, and if you're capable of doing things like this, then it's evident that the potential behind your mastermind is never ending, right? Pollock is the one that brought Jacques Villeneuve into kart and F1 before founding Bar, and spent 4 years of his life on the latest project that we've been tipped recently, as he originally conceived the idea of the EDI, Equality, Diversity and Inclusion team, that aims for 50-50 gender quotient across the entire operation. In times like this, it's evident that Pollock would draw a lot of attention to himself with his actions, and that's why Racing News 365 tried to have an exclusive interview with one of the most controversial and mysterious figures on the grid. As expected though, nothing much was said, as he was very cautious to confirm that he had submitted the EOL documentation required to date in any event confirmed by FIA sources, and whether he was in talks with some serious investors. If you want to run in Formula One, you'd need much more than a genius mind, and Pollock is the one that knows this the best. When money talks, we need to listen, or even better, follow their lead. One of the countries that have been closely involved in the sport is Saudi Arabia, not just by Aramco's presence, but the racing track in Jeddah, one that was built in record time and has become a sensation ever since. Even though human rights are under a huge question mark here, the fact that the sport is dependent heavily on these giants in the oil industry and the money pouring in from the Gulf countries may shut some foul mouths up. Therefore, one person that was privately asked by Racing News 365 regarding the involvement of the kingdom in the sport in terms of them having their own team is Prince Khalid, the president of the Saudi Motorsport Federation. His comments were quite fruitful, and while he didn't deny any kind of involvement, the response was exactly what you'd expect when you have a negotiation process going on, but you don't want too much information to go out in public. When talking about it, the Prince said, "It's still in the very early stages. There are lots of feasibility studies and there are lots of things we still need to do and consider. Now things are a lot easier to enter Formula One, but there's a lot to do before we take the final decision. Hopefully we can sort a lot of things soon and not later, because to enter Formula One later will cost a lot more. We're looking closely and we have a lot of interest." We highly doubt that the Saudis would give up if they had to pay $600 million instead of $200 million to enter the sport. But when they say that it's now much cheaper to enter, it's evident that they'd use a huge amount of money to facilitate the process and become even the 11th team that would race on the grid. What gives us a lot of hope is that the Prince didn't actually deny that there's an EDI project under consideration, saying that right now it's too early to go into these kinds of details. So with no denial, but also no affirming by the Saudi Arabian side, what's next for the sport? Having a separate team from one of the countries that are vastly bashed by Western fans due to, as we mentioned earlier in this video, the criminal records in terms of human rights would be a true controversy in the sport. Yes, it would gain them a lot of money, but if you see the Qatar and the Miami GP and the Saudi Arabian as well as the Bahrain GP, what's the first difference that you notice? That's right, the fans' attendance. The sport lives and breathes by the fans, no matter how much money you can attract from the side. After all, this has been the main pillar that F1 was able to place its popularity on, and if they don't have the end product to sell to the fans, then what's this thing all about? That's why the entrance of Andretti makes more sense compared to the Saudis' influence in the sport. But given the fact that the president of the FIA, Ben Mohammed Salim, has vocally supported the expansion of the sport in these countries, goes on to show that there's a lot going on behind the curtains. Furthermore, the Prince has admitted that the Saudi Arabian kingdom hopes to have a little bit more influence in the sport than just having a track that other teams can race on. As he went on to elaborate, "It's our goal to bring the know-how, experience and expertise to Saudi Arabia. It's our goal not just to host events. We want to have a bigger role in Formula One. We want a Saudi team, hopefully. One day in the near future, we want to have Saudi mechanics. Maybe we can start manufacturing cars here. Maybe move some of the team headquarters to Saudi." With that being said, the sport is now on the move, and whether they'd allow a team from Saudi Arabia to race while they've been promoting human rights and support of minorities such as LGBTQ+, time will tell. What do you think about the new team in the sport? Let us know in the comments below.